So this is the second video in a series of 3 videos. Basically, we want to be able to do this. The end goal is to have a list where we select and it's sorted, so we can select any of these names, or in the next row we can come in here and say I only want to see last names that start with the letter G, and we see a shorter list. So this is useful if let's say your list of names grows into many thousands, for example. So instead of just a few hundred, this could go into several thousand. You want to see shorter list just by the first name. So we did the first part, and now we're going to create step 2, the mini lists of full name by each letter of the alphabet. So we go into this sheet, this one, and now I've already created this long formula, but basically you put the letters of the alphabet across the top. And this formula is basically just an array formula that looks back into our names, into here, and it's counting to see how many names start with the letter A. So here we have 5, and we can count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many last names start with the letter B? We have 6, and all the way across. So it's just a simple array formula to say if the left, here's our test, if the left one character of all the last names equals C2, which is, we see right here as a B, give me a 1, else give me a 0. So it loops through that list and it gets puts a 1 every time the last name starts with a B. Then in the end, so we get all these 1s in our array, and in the end we're just adding them together. So if I were to highlight this and press the F9 key on the keyboard, you'd see all the 0s and 1s. So the sum is just adding up the 1s in the end to get our 6. And I'll show you why we're using that in a minute. Now here is just a simple counter, no reason to make it complicated, just sequential. And now let's start looking at this formula here. So instead of, I always give an escape option at the beginning just to make it lighter on Excel. Imagine it was a bigger model. We don't want it to be slow to calculate. So if A3, which is our simple counter, is greater than B1, then we want to stop. So let's go down to here. This is where we get the blank. So we don't even get into this longer formula over here. We're simply telling Excel, if 6 is greater than 5, then just give me a blank. So here's our logical test. If that's true, give me the blank. Stop immediately. Don't even try to just ignore all this stuff. But if that's not true, over here for example, 4 is not greater than 5, then we have to go over to this part and do the longer formula. So now, what's the best way to explain this formula? Let's just go over here and pick a random person. So now we're in the list of all the last names that start with D. And to make this much easier to read, I'm going to do this. This is our first part. I'm going to press Alt-Enter, get that to go to the next row. Now here's an index. Basically the index is just getting our answer. So that's a relatively simple part as well. I'll do another Alt-Enter. And I would say that this is sort of the meat of the whole formula, this long array formula. So now I'll re-enter it. And now we see the formula sort of split up into parts. So here we are. I've just circled the name that we're currently looking at. We're in cell E7. And we know the if statement here. That's a pretty simple thing, just to give Excel an option to stop. This is our answer here in the formula bar, the index. But everything really comes from this array formula in here. So I'll just explain it step by step. So we're basically saying we look at full name ABC. Okay, so we're saying if of all the names in that list, this is our sorted list that's in our table, so full name ABC, we're looking at all these names. If the first left one character, so the left function, it basically looks at something and it pulls out, so you see it down here. The left function, we need some text. The text is simply all those names sorted. How many characters are we pulling out? We're pulling out only 1. And then we're saying if all of those first character from those names is equal to E2. Okay, so what is E2? Well, it's right here. It's the letter D. So if that's true, let's go back to our array formula. So if it's true, we want to see this part over here. We want this value of true, the counter from table 1, which will go back into here. So this is what we want to see, the counter in here. We want to get those numbers, pull that into our array formula. Arrays enable you to put a range of values or a collection of numbers or values into the array. So we go back in here. Let's go to the if statement. Right in there. if this is true, the first letter is a D, then we're going to get the counters. So let's press F9. So those are all the possibilities, right? From 1 to 103. So when it's true, we're going to get those values. When it's false, we simply get a 0. So now if I highlight all of this part, let's highlight this whole array. I'm going to press the F9 key. So all we're getting is 20, 21, 22, all the way up to 26. Everything else is blank. It does not meet our requirement. So if we look back in here, 20, so it's this is our sorted list. And here from 20 to 26, we see that corresponds to all the last names starting with a D over here. So now we have what we want inside of the array, but the problem is we have all of them. We want to extract them from this array one by one. So the way to do that is, once again, to use our counter over here. So at the very end, here's our small function. So the small function, I just accidentally pulled up the help, which we don't want to see. But the small function says, here's all the array, and I want to extract them one by one, starting with, now we want the fifth one. If we're up here, we want the first name that starts with the letter D, because we're getting the counter of A3, which goes over to the 1. But down here for Doug do dash, we want to get the fifth last name that starts with the letter D. So it extracts them one by one, going from the top to the bottom. And that's the same for all the different letters of the alphabet. Only one last name that starts with E. Here we have several. We have 7 of them that start with the letter F. So that's basically how you do it, using a counter, checking at the top to let Excel stop and not do the formula because it's a little bit long. This is our answer. The index is just saying, now that this part gives us the number that we want, and let's try to highlight this and press the F9 key. So it's saying, I want the 24th item from the full name ABC in table 1. Okay, so table 1, full name ABC. Let's go look at that. Here it is. And I want the 24th. Oh, there's Doug. He's the 24th number in the sorted list, and now it pulls it back into here. So this step is what sorts them all by the first letter. So just to quickly review, any of these long formulas, if you can learn how to read them and break them down into steps, and I even did the Alt-Enter to put them on different rows here in the formula bar, you can kind of audit them and see what they do. So this is basically just checking our full name ABC from this sheet over here, and we want to get all the last names that start with the letter D, give us the counter number, which just makes it easier to vertically identify where they come from, and then just extract them. Here we get number 1, and here we get 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down, and we go back to the index, which just gets us the answer we want to see. We don't want to see a number. In the end, we want to see a name. And the first part is just giving Excel the option to stop and not do the whole formula. I like this much better than putting if-error around the whole thing. I think that's slower to calculate on larger models. So I'll do one more video that will then tie it in to how to come over here and select D and see the names that start with the letter D.